welcome again to another Stoneridge Confab. Really excited today to kind of go over our topic, but before we dig in, really what I want to do here is just talk through some of the housekeeping items that we typically tackle on Confab right away at the beginning. So first and foremost, if this is your first Stoneridge Confab, welcome. Basically, it's a live stream that we do twice a month. It's every 2 weeks, basically. That really goes through the Microsoft technology stack and how we use that technology stack to support businesses with obviously a lot of the objectives that they have that require some type of business system, whether it's Dynamics, Azure, modern work like Office and Teams and some of those tools, right? So the intent here is to make something that is open for the audience to be able to ask questions and participate. We stream on LinkedIn, we stream on YouTube, and we stream on Twitch, and ironically Twitch is where we started. So if you guys want to post comments, we've got chat that we're constantly monitoring. If you've got questions about things, we'd love to be able to interact with you and answer any of those questions live as we're going through it, so it's not like a webinar where you have to hold your questions till the end or even forget about them. You can even badger Keith because he'll love that as well, as you can tell. So with that, one final thing I want to kind of mention here is the fact that we do have a really big modern manufacturing event coming up here on October 2nd that if you have not signed up for, I highly recommend that you check it out. We're going to be talking about AI, more specifically around Dynamics and some of the business system capabilities, and we're actually going to be demoing some of these technologies and how we actually envision them helping obviously a lot of different agribusinesses in our market. So we're really excited for it. Like I said, if you haven't saved the date for October 2nd, do it. Register online. I'm sure that our marketing team will post something in the chat here as well, so that way you can register. It'll be a great time. We're looking forward to the conversation and just kind of giving back to the community in terms of what our education is and what our focus is, obviously, in the business system space. So yeah, Keith, that was a lot to kind of get around, so I want to go ahead and introduce Mr. Keith Bangasser. Keith, do you want to do a quick introduction for the audience here?
Sure. Thanks, Scott. Hey, I'm Keith Bangasser. I do product design and the pre-sales work for the Leverage commodity accounting product. I've been doing a commodity accounting, well, probably before you were born, Scott. I mean, I've been doing this since about 1993, I guess, back in the day, and worked with a lot of different products, and just really excited about some of the functionality that we've been able to bring forward in the Leverage product. And man, the future with artificial intelligence and Copilot is just... it's just amazing,
right?
The things that are on the forefront. So I'm really looking forward to that. The other thing I wanted to add is that you said we broadcast on Twitch a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I got to tell my kids because I think they watch the Twitch, but I don't know what that is. So
right. Well,
so now I can say, hey, I'm on Twitch now.
There you go. Yeah, you can say you're on YouTube as well, right? So yeah.
Well, yeah, at least I know what that is.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. My littlest 7-year-old, he finds it funny when he goes on YouTube and then he finds one of our broadcasts because I do a test to make sure everything is broadcasting properly, and he'll click on it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to do this. It's a little bit different of a vehicle, obviously, but obviously the intent is to have more conversation around it, which is a whole point of Confab, right? So I guess, Keith, just to kind of start the conversation, at a really high level here, like you've been in, like you said, the industry for quite some time, and you didn't give yourself, I think, enough credit because you've gone through and designed systems in the past as well, right, that weren't on the Dynamics product line per se, but like with GP and some of the other solutions that are out there, you've added or created functionality really as a designer, right, in terms of the capabilities and needs of a business. And this is, I think, did you say it's your third iteration of building an application from the ground up, kind of, as part of it?
Yep. It would be kind of be fourth, but the very first one I kind of watched right out of college. I was just learning, but then the second and third ones, I was kind of primarily the designer for it, how the product worked, what it does, how it works, that type of thing. So yeah, this is my third try. I think we got it right this time.
Right. It's amazing what you learn in architecture, and you're like, yeah, I do it differently, right, as you go through it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and sometimes you say, "I'll never do that way again," and then, well, that was probably the right way to do it.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah. As you're like, whoops, I shouldn't
whoops,
try to change that, right?
right?
Well, I guess Keith, just let's dive in right away for the audience because I think a lot of people are kind of curious, obviously, on AI. Obviously, I think it's been marketed like crazy. We've seen some newer, news come out recently, obviously, with the new model, which has been codenamed Strawberry from OpenAI, where we have now the ability for these large language models, as we've kind of talked about, which is the generalization of AI, where they really use that for reasoning now, right? And so what we're starting to see is, the very first iteration of this journey has really been around enablement in terms of the application being able to even support AI automation by making APIs exposed, by making use cases kind of known, by identifying like what use cases are repeatable across industries, for example. And I think, from an ag perspective, one of the things that really strikes me, Keith, and I know we've had this conversation in the past, but let's bring it to the audience level as well here. It's really around like ag and how it is the largest distribution network on the planet with the worst technology infrastructure that I have seen bar any industry, and it's pretty eye-opening, to be honest. Like, just kind of starting that conversation, why is that? Like, what is why is it that technology has never been kind of that forefront? Because if we start talking about AI to an ag company, they're just going to look at us and laugh typically because they're not even on a modern platform. So maybe, Keith, can you give me a little bit of background maybe on that in the audience? Because I think that'll help for the framing and what we're going to be talking about here as we go through this.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Scott. I'm not sure why agriculture has lagged a little bit in technology. I think mostly for probably two reasons. There's not a lot of businesses in the ag business, right? There's just not a lot of, as far as just pure numbers of commodity processors or grain elevators, even ag retailers. There's just not that many. It's not that big of a market. So it kind of largely goes ignored by the software companies, even though it's such an important part of our everyday life, right? We got to eat, right? And that's what our customers in the commodity world do, right? Is they get us our food. So the other part is the margins are tight, right? So even though they might be, billions of dollars or millions and millions of dollars in business, the margins are so small that it's hard for those industries or those businesses to really invest in the technology like maybe other industries would. So I think basically the size of the industry and the investment dollars available, I think, are probably the biggest limiting factors there as far as advancing that technology. And some of it's a little bit of the interest in doing it too. It's like, well, what we got works, so we getting by.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
maybe like you said, it's not a primary driver then for someone that is like the growers, right? Like there's going to be some technologies like precision ag, which we'll talk about in just a little bit here, that may assist to have better yields, which makes sense then for a grower perspective. But like you said, like a co-op, like there's like you said, it's not like they're making money hand over fist. But then there's also then some of these other industries that are still what we would classify as agribusiness, but those would be like commodity processors, right? And I feel that those processors typically, if they have a good technology that they've gone to market with, like we've talked to soybeans and the extraction of protein that can be used obviously for animals or for humans potentially, or ethanol facilities. Those are where you start seeing more of that value from a commodity perspective being added to get to a higher profit margin. Would you say the same too? Does it feel like it kind of goes in that direction then for that, or am I
Yeah, well,
misrepresenting that?
no, I think so. But at the end of the day, most all of our customers are in the commodity business, right? So the market value, and so really they need to try to be as low cost a producer as possible in order to compete. Whether you're selling ethanol into the ethanol market, if you want to make more money than the next guy who's selling ethanol into the same market at the same prices, you just got to be better at it and keep your costs down, and that's part of it. And so, that part of that restricted budget to in the commodity market is, I think, kind of keeps the technology at a limit. Now, that's not saying that there's not a lot of great technology and innovations happened
Right.
over the past few years. There has been, and lots of it, and it's made quite a difference in the industry.
Well, that's where I find it really, really interesting, right? Where we don't have good margins, but one of the ways that we could potentially uplift margin would be through automation, right? And so, like, let's start down that path a little bit. So, the product that Stoneridge created was called Leverage, right? And so, Leverage is a wholly owned subsidiary to Stoneridge software, basically. Leverage is what we call an ISV, an independent software vendor that builds code or solutions or extensions on the Dynamics 365 finance and supply chain management platform, formerly known as Finance and Operations, and basically then extends it to support some of those common business scenarios that are not generally tackled in manufacturing or distribution environments. Things like contracts, splits, farm and fields, right, as part of it. So, kind of going to that path, like, why leverage, I guess, Keith? Like, if we think about, right, like, why?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, like you said earlier, Scott, I designed 2 other commodity accounting processes, or at least helped in the design of them. And so when we designed Leverage, we always had in the vision is that automation, right? We want to do more work, do more transactions with less effort by the users. And so one of the things that we've just released now kind of puts a cap on that whole process, and that's that inbound ticket automation, or that inbound settlement automation. So the ability to take that contract and bring a scale ticket in and apply the ticket to the contract and settle that ticket with the growers. Well, basically, we can do it now click-free. It's all automatic with the latest functionality. Is there's a review function to make sure that you pay them the right amount, and so that again, but Leverage was designed with that in mind from this very start. Other legacy softwares would just really struggle with that just because of the way their software is architected and their data is built.
Yeah, right. And so, like, on the screen here in the background, I just popped open, for example, like an inbound ticket, right? A scale ticket that we would be processing. And to your point, like, there's a lot of very specific needs that anyone in commodity processing is going to need. More specifically, the way we've tackled it without having these capabilities has been to create like a purchase order structure, right? Where we would purchase the product in, even if it was a corn commodity, as an example, or soybeans. But there's a lot of differences, right? If you look at like grade factors that I'm pulling here, for example, those as a testing output affect the price then of that particular contract. And it could be different types of contracts, right? Because it's not just a straight, like, I'm going to buy it at $3.70 a bushel, which, there is, right? Cash contracts, right? But there's also basis, there's storage contracts, there's all these different types of contracts that a commodity processor may want to have because they have to represent that differently on their balance sheet or on their reporting, right? As they go through that. Is that kind of a true statement, I guess?
Well, pretty true, Scott. And you hit on a whole bunch of cool things here. First of all, the inbound ticket screen. Our goal, although you pulled up a scale ticket here, our goal is that the user would never key this, right? So that automation part, this is coming from the scale system itself. So that scale operator who's weighing trucks in and out, testing the grain every day, he's just saving and printing the tickets for the truck driver. But those tickets come in here all automatically, right? Using our document exchange and the XML features that we've built in. So that's to start with, is that, hey, all this data came in and we didn't really key it. It was just part of somebody's job out at the scale to gather that information. And then, there's a lot of unique things about a scale ticket in agriculture, and that quality information is so important, because if the grain is too wet or it's got too much foreign material, and what foreign material is things that aren't the grain. So if it's corn and there's stuff that's not corn in there, that's foreign material. We want to deduct, or we sometimes we have a tolerance, right? But in the industry, we'll deduct some of the commodity, so we'll shrink that grain. And if you brought us 1,000 pounds, we'd maybe only pay you for 980 of it because you gave us 20 pounds of not grain, that type of stuff. So there's discounts, there's charges, discounts for the commodity, the quality. There's origin weights and destination weights. In other words, some contracts, if you're buying them based on the weight that it left the elevator at, or if you're buying it based on the weight it arrived at your facility at, all those kind of rules really make it kind of complicated. And that's all the stuff we tackle with the leverage product.
Right. And so like a purchase contract right here that I pulled up in the background, you can tell you've got concepts like delivery periods. You've got like what is the quantity that's been committed that's going to be potentially received. And I guess the thing that I just want the audience to understand is that if you deal with commodities, soybeans, corn, any like apples, even we've gotten to conversations with. I think pistachios is another one that we've had conversations around. I mean, really, there's usually like a board price for a lot of these types of commodities that is used to directionally give growers like what is the value of my commodity, or what is it going to be at that period of time. But there's some, like you said, like a basis contract, like that took a long time for me to try to even understand to a degree, but you can't really simulate that in ERP, which is why leverage really exists, right? Because there's also like splits. Like that was eye-opening for me when we were dealing with co-ops, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we're going to have it where Frappier Farms, they take 70% of that profit, but we're going to send a check for 30% to the church that Scott wants us to do. And I'm just like, what? Like, why wouldn't I get the 100% and give 30% myself? Instead, they set up contracts like that. Church might be one, but more commonly like landowners, right? And things of that nature, right?
Yeah. So example, Scott, if I'm a rich landowner and you're a farmer, you might not have cash to pay me to rent my land, but I say, hey, I'll go 60-40 with you. You just give me 40% of the crop, and you get 60 for all the work that you do. I get 40 because I'm a landowner, and so part of the scale ticket is, Scott, you'll bring in a scale ticket for 1,000 bushels. Well, I get 40% of it as the landlord, and so I get to sell and market my crop, and you get to sell and market yours. So yeah, it's kind of a weird thing, but it's been going on for years and years and years. So we support that as part of the commodity product.
Right, which is awesome. And so, I mean, this also gets to why did we take finance and supply chain, right, as part of the platform for it. And I think it's pretty obvious to us, and maybe we'll just say it to the audience. We have a platform that allows for a variety of technologies to access and interact with the data in the business processes inside of our platform. So as an example, we can create a customer through a web service or through Power Automate or through Logic apps, right? We've got a full API stack that's exposed. And what we do have that does make sense for agribusinesses, whether or not they're a grower, commodity processor, or even technically then as well like a co-op or an ag retailer, we've got like a lot of those basics that are needed in a business system, like inventory management and invoicing and GLAP and AR and credit and collections, right? So we haven't built something from the ground up. Instead, what we said is, well, all of those typically are tackled, like if you buy a best of breed type system, you integrate them with your GLAP AR based capabilities, right? But through an integration. Instead, we said, let's just do it natively, because there's a lot of benefit by using then an ERP platform like Microsoft. And I think that's going to get us more into this automation conversation and AI, right? Because Microsoft is investing heavily inside of AI. Well, finance and supply chain management is our base, where that investment is occurring. We get access to some pretty cool technologies then, Keith, right, to start doing that. And like, let's start with the automation perspective here. You were talking to me about like settlement automation. So one of the things that was interesting was, we talk about how the margins are so thin. Well, the large component of cost on a business is going to be labor in some way. And it may not be the overwhelming factor, but if you can shave a couple points off of that by keeping the same staff but being more efficient and faster through automation, you can increase then those profit margins, right? And I think that's people have overlooked that from a technological perspective, I think, in that industry. But I will say the customers that we're starting to interact with now with the product, they do see that value and benefit, and they are then seeing those margins increase as they do that investment. So maybe Keith, can you talk a little bit about like some of those automation opportunities that you've kind of thought through, that let's not even relay it to AI, because the thing I like to teach people is don't look at AI to solve the problem. Look at the problem first, and then let's see if AI can assist with that problem as opposed to trying to lead with it. So what do you got for some of those
Yeah.
automation opportunities?
Well, our first one is we have purchase contract with a grower, right? So a grain processor or a grain elevator, someone who's buying the commodity might agree to buy a commodity from a grower. Now you can see if you scroll down just a little bit, there's that delivery schedule down below, and you can see, hey, in this one it's scheduled to be delivered in October. And so you can have multiple contracts with the same grower. Maybe you have one or two for October delivery, maybe another one for January, maybe one for February. So a grower might have a handful of contracts, or even maybe quite a few of them. Well, the first step is when they start delivering the commodity to you, you need to know which contract I should apply that ticket to. Which contract are they delivering? And so some of that automation that we have built is an automatic application piece. Now we have a piece where you can manually apply it, where you pick the ticket, you pick the contract, apply it. Beautiful. Or you can put multiple tickets, apply it. That's where that ticket application screen. Absolutely. There,
Right
if you do
here.
the search, if you do the search there, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of them there that are probably unapplied. You might have to clear that filter out, but
There's
there
Alex
it is.
right there, right?
Yeah, so you can hit select that ticket, and then down below you have a list of contracts that they don't have any, right? But sometimes they have more than one or two. Well, we have an automatic application piece that automatically figures out, based on some rules, which contract they should apply. The system can apply that ticket to automatically.
That's really cool. So like as I
Yeah.
go through this and just look at some of them that are inside of here, now I don't have any contracts that are shown on here, but if I did, I could take then these scale tickets, right, and then automate the application of that, so that way the pricing and all the weights and all that governance is a part of that, right? Is what it really boils down to.
Yeah, it inherits that ticket, inherits that pricing then from that contract. If you change your branch over to Fort Dodge FTD, I think I got a couple in there that might work. Yeah, I got one anyway. So you can see here, there's a scale ticket. You drill back on it. There you go. And if you mark it, if you mark that, it should list the contract.
There
And
it
in this
is.
case, there's just one. So, I mean, it's pretty quick to do this. Click, and apply. But also, the system can do this automatically on a time, with either like a time job, or you can do it once a day, or you can do it every hour, or what have you. The system can do it automatically.
Right. And so and
Yeah.
that's really cool. So what we have here is the ability to quickly and easily define some rules that basically take a ticket and then apply it to that contract. So then whatever those qualitative measures are that impact maybe even that price that you're going to pay then the company that's providing that commodity, whether it's a grower or an ag retailer that you're buying it from. But the net result of all of that is it's very much in my mind like almost like bank reconciliation, right? Where you're reconciling in bank, you're looking at checks, for example, or wires to what the bank statement says. But like if we think about automation here, like we could even go further with automation with
Mhm.
AI, right? So
Absolutely. So we've got rules, right? That you go in and say, okay, look back to the oldest contract first, and then if there's none, look forward for a couple of weeks to see if they're at the end of the month. We got that hard coded in. But think what you could do with AI here, as far as maybe the machine can learn, from how we've applied tickets in the past, and apply them automatically. In fact,
right.
that seems very very reasonable expectation in the near future to be able to deploy AI to apply those tickets in a different way. Instead of a rule set, it uses an AI an AI solution.
To do that. Yeah, and just to kind of
Yeah.
show the audience a little bit more of that. So, an example here in my other environment that I have with Frappier Farms as an example. So, we've got the summary by Copilot, right? That comes into here now so that as Microsoft is adding Copilot based capabilities into the application, the leverage solution is also getting those. So, these summaries, for example, or some of these like there's actually like a purchase order change and the impact of that change, for example, because remember at commodity processors you're going to have commodities, but you're also typically going to have other ingredients that you may be buying that are not commodities that you'll put into a batch to then make a product that you may then bag and then ship as part of that. But kind of to your point, Keith, like if I open up Copilot on the far right here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my mug out of the way here so we can see it. And let me do one thing for the audience just really quickly because it's kind of cut off from a Copilot perspective. So there you go, audience. But things like this, like I could say like, show me grower details, right? And it's asking a question, would you like me to grab the details of this customer? And if I say yes to it, right? So this is actually then using Copilot Studio, which accesses then finance and supply chain management, which is what Leverage is built on. So if you think about then being able to connect Copilot to data that is inside of then your ag software, right, basically, well, we can do that right now. And I think that that's been the biggest challenge that we've had, I think, as a Microsoft industry, so to speak, of getting to this level, of actually having like this sidecar pop up so that you can interact with it, right? Or to do things like create an alert for this grower, right? As an example, do you want me to create it? And I can say, yes, I want it to be created. And I want it to look at the account number as an example. And so it says the account, the alert has been created. So let's go to our manage alerts just to kind of double check this. But if I click on my manage alerts here and we take a look at it, well, there's that field account number and table. Whenever it gets changed for this specific customer, I've now set up an alert without actually having to basically click on anything to do it. Instead, I'm using the conversational based capabilities to do this. So these are like, I did this with an alert around a customer and account number change. Keith, what other areas could we do this with in ag that would be really impactful for people?
Well, I like it, in ag, if you receive a scale ticket that has super high protein on it or super high moisture, hey, alert me, send an email to me and let me know if, when that happens, because maybe I need to keep an eye on what's going on at the scale. Or even, heck, maybe even email that grower the scale ticket information, right? So he knows right away once that ticket hits our system that, what the weights were. Did they load the truck properly? Was it overweight? Was it underweight? Should they put more grain on it, less? And then, some of the quality information, is it too wet? Is it too dry? Is it got a lot of foreign material in it? Those types of things, if you could alert that, and not only internally to your own, staff that can be aware of what's going on, but heck, even this would work externally too,
Yeah,
right?
it says
There's no
send
reason we couldn't,
externally,
right?
right? As
Yeah.
like a business event that can occur with it. And the
Yeah.
work to do this isn't that major. Like, I mean, so this, I always like to crack this open now. Copilot Studio is what we use typically to extend the capabilities of finance and supply chain, or what we call the CE apps as well, which is going to be then the Dynamics 365 sales and those other products, sales, field service, customer service, so on and so forth. But extending this, it's like that one as an example, I just created Power Automates that interact with it. So I actually went into the Finance and Operations app right here, which is our Copilot. And what I did is I basically made a topic and I said, hey, whenever a person asks about a specific topic inside of here as an action or a topic, I wanted it to then path to that, right? So you can see here that you can basically select, and this is in our UDE environment. So if I select our sales finance environment as an example here, what you're going to see is that we are able to then even access, like we said, the leverage-based capabilities by opening up like the finance and operations copilot inside of here. And then inside of this copilot, it's really simple. You basically go to the topics. I created this topic down here, which is create alert or get the grower details. And just to prove to the audience that this is not vaporware, that this is not fake, if I click on this, you can see I've got a topic that I enter in. Look up grower, look up customer, because a customer and grower, they're kind of used synonymously in a lot of those customers that we interact with. I'm grabbing the customer number that came from Dynamics. I'm running through and then saying, do you want me to grab the details? I'm calling a Power Automate and passing in the customer, and then I'm summarizing it inside of that Power Automate. And if I view that Power Automate inside of here, if I click on that as an example, you're going to see then that this flow has a structure that says, all right, take the company and then take the customer information and then do something with it. So we see we ran that 4 minutes ago. And if I click on the edit for it here, you can see then that with with Copilot Studio, almost called it Power Virtual Agents because that's what it was called in the past. What we can do here is we can actually then access that data and then use it to be able to drive then some of those responses. And in this example, you can see the skill. We grab that record, we create the text. I have additional context that I give with it as well, but I'm basically copying the body of the record and sending it. And I could, for additional context, I could say, only look at these 10 fields, or these 5 fields are critical. Make sure to keep that in your summary as well. But I will tell you, Keith, like it's just amazing how easy it is to potentially tackle some of these scenarios now.
Very cool.
Right?
Very cool. Yeah,
right?
That's awesome.
So,
well, that's kind of the power of having leverage built right inside that platform, right? Because it acts like any of the other data that's in finance and operations.
Nailed it. So let's talk through, Keith, a couple of the, like, what are some of the AI type automation opportunities that we're going to see here coming up? Because we've got automation, but we've got a couple of them, I think, even in our minds that we want to use. One of them has been like using vision, right, to look at line queues. You want to kind of describe that for the audience?
Oh yeah, for example, one of the problems in the industry is that there's a long line at the unload elevator to unload the grain, right? So the grower comes, he has to get in line with his truck and sits there and waits until it's his turn to unload. We've seen some people, so we're and nobody's happy when a trucker is in line waiting to unload. The trucker's not happy. He's not billing any miles. The grower's not happy. He's not getting his truck back to get another load in. And the elevator people aren't happy because there's a long line and everybody's stressed out. Heck, even law enforcement's not very happy because they're parked out past the road in the traffic and causing a traffic situation. So one of the things that, one of the problems is like, well, how can we better schedule that? And you'll see some of the grain processors out there today will go ahead and have a camera on the lines, right? And they'll be able to see, how long the line is to get to unload at the elevator. So one of the things with AI is that we can turn that line that you can look at into maybe a text message and say, hey, there's seven trucks in line, and at this moment, or something like that, because AI can kind of look at a picture and count the trucks. It's pretty cool. I saw you do it.
Right. And so, to be fair, I think what we'll do there is obviously during the Modern Manufacturing Conference, we're going to be going through those 5 scenarios, and that's one of them, right? Where you have the ability to see how many trucks are there, use the vision capabilities inside of AI to basically look at that queue. And it's great that you got the camera, but to your point, like you could actually have it where then you've got an ability to send a text message to all of your growers that says, hey, like, don't drop off right now. We've got a 130-minute wait, because they could even like sign up on like customer service and click on a button and say, hey, I'd like to be notified of long queue lines or something of that nature. But it just creates a better relationship then, right, Keith, as you go through that?
Yeah, for sure. Just knowing what to expect, is half the battle, and or maybe you just don't send the truck right away. You wait and have 'em, and maybe they have lunch first and then go in.
Right? Right?
Grab a donut, and then go in when the line's not so long.
Right? Exactly. So that one that makes a lot of sense. So that's very much like I don't know, like the existing AI based capabilities that are out there that a lot of companies use in ag is like precision ag, right? Where I don't know if you can describe that a little bit, Keith, but what like precision ag does have some of that machine learning for nutrients, right? That it typically uses as part of that. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, they're doing stuff. They'll take a map, a grid, a sample of a field. Let's say it's 160 acres, and they sample every 4 acres. So, maybe there's 40 samples, and by sample I mean take a sample of the soil, and test it for, nitrogen and N, P, and K, and kind of make an assessment of what that soil needs to grow a good crop next year. And it's not the same over the whole 160 acres, right? Each part of the field's a little different. So there's, machine learning, and there's algorithms around, formulating the right fertilizer, the right blend of fertilizer, and the right rate of fertilizer to get the yield goals. And then as they apply that fertilizer onto the field, the machine, based on its position, will adjust and maybe put some more fertilizer down, maybe lighter fertilizer as it moves across the field. So some of that stuff they're doing is amazing. I just watched a video yesterday of a John Deere sprayer that has this recognition where it can tell as it drives across the field, it can see the weed, right? Because the weed's a different size, it's a different color. Turns a little spray nozzle on, just a little bit, kills that one weed or that little patch. So the spray isn't being applied to the entire field; it's just being applied to where the weeds are, which is really cool.
Right?
And
Because
that's all some type of AI type of stuff going on there.
right, and that's
Yeah.
because if you think about like the cost of chemicals, right? Like chemicals have skyrocketed. I was talking to one of my friends at Land O'Lakes, and it was very interesting to hear their brand, right, that they have, and how much that fertilizer and chemical, the pesticides have increased in cost. And to your point, like it's just a better like this whole pray and spray, right? That used to be there, so to speak. That's not like environmentally, like there's a lot of
Right.
negative things that can happen with that. Whereas if you can be much more targeted, I know the machines are more expensive to do the investment around, but the total cost of ownership over time, then with chemical prices especially, I'd expect it to be then lower, right? As you go through that, Keith.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that just makes so much sense because your whole field's not got weeds, right? It's in patches,
Right?
and so if the machine can turn it on and off, and you don't, it's huge, both cost savings for the pesticides, and then of course the environmental part of it. You're not spraying the whole field; you're using just a lot less where it's needed,
Yep,
which
and
is
that
great.
much more targeted as you go through it. So okay, so
Yep.
that makes sense for then. So there's already existing, and we're not typically the ones like though there's a whole industry around that. Like Raven Industries is one that I know of with their sprayer systems where they will, to your point, add or subtract fertilizer. It even gets as complex as changing the balance of potentially like more ammonia versus more phosphate, whatever it is, right? That as a part of it. So it's kind of interesting to see those systems that are out there.
Yep, a lot of those applicators have three bins for the DAP, the DAP, the diammonium phosphate, the urea, which is mostly nitrogen, and the potash, and it can use the right combinations of those three products to get the right formulation as they fly down the field at they go 15 to 20, sometimes a little over 20 miles an hour.
Oh
And
wow,
that must, yeah.
right?
My son is was a fertilizer applicator, and he always liked to go at least 20. 'Cause then the bumps, you don't feel all the bumps. You kind of float over them, he said.
Right, right. I can see that then, right? That makes sense. So I guess that's one of the areas. So that like if we talk about like I really like to define for the audience like where what could we use that data in ERP? I think we could, right? Like it'd be interesting because then we could see like by field maybe the total cost of what that investment has been technically for those chemicals as an example, because in dynamics we keep track of it, but we're not typically like on our field maps, right? Like we've got a map of a field, but we're not getting to specifics like specific areas or heat maps inside of dynamics that drive that, right? That's more of that
Right.
precision ag type software that you would integrate with, right, to drive that.
Yeah, but it's super important that we have the data, Scott. But and because yeah, the mapping and all that is in some other software, but we're going to take that product that we get in and we're going to manufacture that and make another product out of it. So whether we take wheat and we turn it in, turn it into flour, we want to be able to track right back to that farm and field and that wheat and that farm and field and that location and what chemicals, what pesticides, what seed was used, what agronomy practices were used, and so we need that data. We love that data to help with our identity preservation and that data around what agronomy practices were used to grow this, well, essentially this bag of flour, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, consumers are buying a bag of flour or cilantro or whatever, and then we track it back through our identity preservation to back right to the farm and field and what was going on that farm and field and when it
Well,
was
that
planted, all those things. Yeah.
right, that farm to table, right? So
Yeah.
being able to see the entire supply chain impact with it, to your point, is really critical. And it's cool that we've got that capability. To your point, like that's the benefit I think of the Dynamics platform in a lot of ways too, is that we can still consume that data to use it in reporting and visibility and traceability as an example, even though it's not in Dynamics per se. We can take that data, put it to a data lake, use Power BI then to create a really cool dashboard and expose that inside of Dynamics. But we don't own that data. We're just using it as a consumer of that data because we may need to make decisions or understand more of the impact, for example, in terms of what that cost is of chemical for a field, right? So there's lots of benefits in that regard. I guess let's get more then to like specifics then inside of dynamics where AI might be able to help. What are some of those that you've been thinking through, Keith, that in the future here are probably going to be differentiators for agribusinesses that need basically AI to help with their automation needs? What are some of those ideas that
Yeah.
you've been kind of brewing up?
Well, some of the things that we've even done some testing on this or created this is, for example, we have a purchase contract with a grower. Well, sometimes that contract changes, right? We agree to different terms, or we made a mistake and we had to change the quantity or the delivery terms or the commodity or the quantity. And so we have a screen inside of finance and operations, inside of leverage, that shows all the different changes that happen to a contract. But sometimes piling through all that data is just kind of a hassle, So being able to use a question-based AI to go through and say, hey, who changed this contract last, and what did they change?
Right? And then provide that in a human readable format as opposed to a table format that you're like, well, I don't understand any of this that changed, right? So that's one of the major features that I think even Carl was showing. I think we did a demo of that same technology that he created for Stoneridge that we have is being used obviously with that leverage capability, which is pretty cool. What else is there, Keith, that we've been kind of brewing up?
Well, we've been, again, a lot of those question type things about the data that we think about, like who's been delivering today, what growers are delivering, what of my locations, which ones are busy today, who's got those type of tickets, or who's doing the most tickets today, seeing the most loads. So we see a lot of those kind of question things, and that's already going on today. But some of the predictive stuff and the transactional creations are in the future going to be, I'm really looking forward to them. And one of the predictive things is, how busy are we going to be at the scale today,
Right?
right? So we can, or even this week, so we can staff, because staffing's always a problem. You don't want too much staff there, but you do want enough to service the customers that are coming in. So, based on the weather and our purchase contracts and history, how busy are we going to be this week? Because as we head in Minnesota, we're heading into, soybean harvest here. Will start, well, probably pretty soon next week.
Yep.
History is going to tell us we're going to get busier. It'd really be neat to be able to do some of those predictive type of things and say, hey, we can expect 100 trucks on next Thursday.
Right. And
That
that's
would
as
be
simple as using what we call time series regression, right? Which is a machine learning type capability that's used for like demand planning. Like you can use that, for example, with cash flow is another area that it works. But to your point, like I think the key thing to note though is that there's generalities in time, and this is my ignorance to a degree here, Keith. So please school me if I need to be schooled. But there are like we know that around fall we're going to obviously have soybeans that we're going to be delivering, right? But the weather impacts the timing of that. But once that occurs, it's pretty common, right? Like you're going to have like all of a sudden now all the growers are going to be coming in, even though it might be 2 weeks behind because maybe they got a late plant, for example. Well, or maybe they've got a new pedigree of crop that they're using, right? Or a new brand or whatever it is. But the net result, though, is that swing typically occurs like if you shifted it 2 weeks, well, you're going to have a very similar spike and decline right as you go through it. Is that a true statement? Just to make sure I'm tracking correctly, Keith.
Yeah, for sure. So especially if it's like a generalized weather thing, right? And your trade area's got, okay, it rained this entire trade area. And so everything's pushed back 3 days, right? Till it dries out again. But sometimes it just rains on the north half, right? And so how many soybeans are we buying from the northern half of our trade area versus from the south half, or maybe it's the east, or maybe it's the west. So you can even go deeper with that AI, and something you could maybe do in your brain, but man, AI could probably come up with that data and say, well, in the past, or the contracts we have, or in the past we've gotten 60% of our product comes from the north half of our territory. It rained up there, so we're going to be busy, but maybe not as busy as we would if it was rained in the south half of our territory.
So what you're really telling me here, Keith, is that data is going to be a very big driver for anyone in agribusiness to really effectively understand what that weather impact is going to be potentially for the yields that they're going to then be committing to. Because remember, a lot of these, like if it's an ag retailer, they're buying from the grower and then they're reselling then to the market, right? So they don't want to oversell or undersell. They want to make sure that what they buy is what they sell at some point, right, as they go through it. So having more accurate weather data at the field level, having a better integration then with your customers. And I think this goes to another automation event that you've talked about, which is that business to business relationship and the sharing of data. Can you describe that a little bit, Keith? Because I think that's part of it, right?
For sure. On the sales side, if you're a grain elevator, for example, you might be selling the soybeans, we'll use that as an example, that you're buying from your growers. You might be selling those soybeans to an exporter. Let's say they go out to the West Coast and they're exported. Part of that information is that we might load a unit train in Minnesota or North Dakota or Iowa, and it's 110 cars. We have the origin, we have the weights at the elevator, and then those tickets or those the rail cars head off and take about a week to get out to Portland, for example. Well, that ticket information that we took at the elevator, we should be able to electronically send that to who we sold it to. Maybe it's Cargill, ADM, any of the big grain buyers that export. We should be able to send them tickets with that details as far as the quality information, what the moisture, the test weight, the foreign material. They should be able to get those, immediately when the train leaves, right? That's not happening today. Sometimes they get a spreadsheet, but they get all different kinds of spreadsheets and different kind of formats. But being able to do a business to business transaction to say, hey, here's what's coming, and then when it gets there, to get that ticket back, it says, well, here's what we got. You said you sent us this, we got this, and the contract will decide who rules as far as which weights and grades. But just exchanging that information accurately and timely the industry's just not doing that.
So I want to show an example here of something that could really span this. And this is oversimplified. And the reason it's oversimplified is I wanted something that generally could be applied towards almost any business from a use case perspective. So I've got it kind of pulled up here, Keith, in the background. So I'm going to just share my screen for the audience just really quickly here. So kind of to Keith, your point here as I move this just really quickly over a little bit. But to your point, we've got no really good integration potentially that exists right now for a business that's in ag, we'll say. Like we could do ag XML, right, which is, a technology set that we could use to drive it. But let's start using Copilot to not invest as much potentially down that path, right? Let's say that we've got another business partner that they just send emails that then confirm some of these details. And let's say they have a pattern where they typically send that out. Maybe they have an automated message that they send out from their system that comes to you as an email. Well, here's an email that Scott Frappier sent from Gmail here that he would like to order some HDMI cables. Now, this product-wise, in ag, a product is a product. It's the same thing as what we look at as a discrete product like cables or iPhones or any other product that's out there. Now, corn, for example, we store typically like in bushels or receive in bushels, right? And then we may convert that depending upon if we're going to bag it or if we're going to put it in a tote or whatever we do as part of it. But the reason I'm highlighting this is that, like, imagine if you have this as a salesperson or as somebody and you say, yep, I'm going to put this in my automated order creation scenario here. And what's going to happen is that I'm going to have it where, as an example, on my flows here, if I kind of move this out of the way on my managed flows here, I've got this create sales order from AI that was created here. So what I did is I basically created an automate that says, if there's an email that lands inside of this folder, I want you to look at that email, identify the customer and the product, and if the customer exists inside of Dynamics, I want you to create basically an order inside of the system. So in this situation, you can see it's running in the background. So once again, this is not fake. This is real stuff that I'm showing that we can do. And what we're going to see here in a second, I flipped it over to the new GPT-4 model instead of 3.5. It's a little bit slower, but a little bit more accurate. You're going to see that it succeeded. And if I go into my orders now inside of here and we go ahead and refresh our orders, what I should see is an AI generated order that's inside of here that I can click on now, and I can see that this is from Scott Frappier, and A-Datum Inc. is actually who Scott Frappier is. And I've got 2 HDMI cables. If I click on the edit here as an example, we should see that we have HDMI cables for $20 each for 2 of them that are here, right? So this is an example of using automation with AI to do something that programmatically you might do using XML, but because we can use AI to do this, I'll just kind of crack it open so you guys can see it. If I click on the edit here, it's super simple. What do? Well, when a new email arrives, I'm grabbing some of the currencies and price list information. I have a prompt here that I run that says identify the senders and products. And this prompt, which is really cool, allows me basically to also surface additional details that then support basically that. So I said, take the following email content and identify the customer and product that needs to be ordered. I identify who the sender is and I pass in the email body. And then I say, use the following data to identify if the customer account number exists. And if it does exist, what I want it to do is I want it to output it in a format that I can then do like branching or conditions off of it to be able to tackle it. This literally took me 5 minutes to create. And what's so powerful about it is that I could do this writing code, but it's so much faster to do it this way. And the accuracy, if you do the right prompt around it, is actually fairly high. And that's been something we've talked about on Confab Keith before, that the power of the prompt matters in how you get the large language model to reply basically with those details. But as you can see here in this prompt, I can even then align it to email details that are related to the account. And then from there, basically what happens is that if it does have a customer, it'll grab the customer, create the order product, and send a success email. So what I should see inside of Outlook is that I have, even in my inbox here, look at that, a success email that was created. I did a really quick one. It's not really prettily formatted yet, but as you can see, it's pretty easy and powerful to do that. So Keith, I guess the question would be, would that be something that people would probably like in agribusiness? Because, I don't know, maybe a grower sends a text message that says, I want to buy something, right? How
Well,
does that work?
yeah, totally. I mean, we got to do this. So, okay.
Yeah, right.
One of the scenarios is that, all these commodity processors have a byproduct, whether you're selling soybean meal or distillers grains or wheat
Yep.
mids or whatever, and so the feedlots need to buy this stuff. So if they could, and when we have a load order as part of our solution that says they've ordered, a feedlot wants us to deliver this product on this day to this feedlot. Well, that all happens today through a phone call. The feedlot has to call between the hours of 8 and 5. Get the merchandiser on the service people, on customer service reps on the phone and say, hey, I want a load order for next Tuesday. If they could send an email that says, hey, I need one load of distiller's grain next Tuesday, and we can go in, read that email electronically, create the load order, and send it back. Yeah, it'll be there. That's pretty cool stuff.
Right? And I think that,
Yeah.
that would be like, if you think about like the automation type events, like let's say that email comes and you try to generate it and it fails. It's really easy to add logic to say, okay, kick that out to an end user, then to an email that they then address it. But what you
Yeah.
can also do through those automation events, you don't have to, like, I get the trust in the machine, right? Like it's like, I don't trust the machine, and I get that from the industry as well. But what you could do is say, well, I'm going to partially trust it, meaning I'm going to let it generate what it can. I'm going to have it attach the original email, and I'm going to set up a queue so that way in the morning at 8 a.m., I'm not creating all this instead of, creating 10 load orders to your point. Instead, I've got 10 that are there that I just review and quickly say confirm, 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 confirm. Like that to me just
Yeah.
feels like an efficiency boost at that point.
Well, it is, and it's really part of why we designed Leverage the way it is from the very get-go. This was always in our vision. We have an activate button, right? So the load come in as just regular load, and then we can look at it, go, yeah, we can do that, and hit activate. Now they get an email back that says, okay, it's confirmed. You're going to get it next Tuesday. So yeah, it's again part of the whole first design, and so I'm excited to see that. That's neat. We got to try to do that.
Right? Right? Yeah.
In our environment, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's some really cool things that are coming down the pike. I guess, Keith, we're getting to time here. I guess, from an automation and AI perspective, what are kind of your parting words maybe that you'd like to say to people just to kind of contemplate and kind of digest? Because, my words are pretty simple, which are, I get that technology, like the hype around it. I totally understand why that can be a turnoff for a lot of people that are in this business, because a lot of people are not at the level of a platform that can even be automated to the level that is there. But I will say, like in the future, I don't think companies that don't focus around automation are going to survive the way that they are now. They may be acquired, they may go out of business and some other company takes over that type of business. But to me, it just feels like we know we're going to have at some point here a gap in skills between the baby boomers and then also really between then the new generations that are coming into this market. And we also know that there's not as many people that are drawn to ag in some ways because of you go to school and you learn about technology, and then you go to ag and everything's in this guy's head and he's all ornery all the time, right? Like there's just a plethora of different things that are there that impact culturally the people that want to go into the market. Like your son, for example, he's doing the robotic perspective of it using drones for spraying, right? That then uses that precision ag detail. that to me is, I think, my message to people that are watching this. Like, you really need to focus on it in the future, because it's not about now, it's about the future. And this isn't a technology that's like HoloLens, or it's more foundational. It's more like the Google search in my mind, to be honest, which means it will have an impact longer term. So that's my message. What's yours,
Yeah,
Keith?
yeah, I'd say, really echo what you say, that this technology is still in its infancy, and there's still lots of problems with it. It doesn't quite work 100% perfectly all the time, but it's moving fast and it will. And so my message would be is, hey, you can either learn this and start adapting and be open to it, and use it in your business and continue to adapt and improve the way you use it, or you can compete against somebody who does.
Right? And I wouldn't want to be the person that's competing against that company that, when a load order comes in, a tailored message goes to that person saying thank you for your business, or I've got an area that I can subscribe to that tells me how far back the queue is that I need to go into to be able to drop off my commodity. Like, these are things that are just going to become better and better and better over time. And the, like some people say, you know, fact non-factual information can cause a hiccup, right? But the reality is that if you don't have even the information in the first place, if you have 70% accuracy, you're up leveling 70% at that level already. And if it gets better and you get feedback on how to make it better, fantastic. But we also know humans screw up all the time as well. Like, you call up and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, no, there's no line, but they didn't look out the camera. And then in that little time period where they said there was no line, there's 50 trucks that come in play, right? It's like, well, that, well, the human screwed up in that situation, right? So I think you got to look at it a little bit differently, right, as you go through it. And like you said, if you don't have those, you're going to suffer, I think, longer term here, in my opinion.
Indeed.
All right, well, let's get off our high horse. So I guess with that, Keith, a huge thank you. And before I let you go to say goodbye, I just want to do one final thing for a wrap up here. As you probably saw, Carly posted it as well. Remember, if you're thinking about attending the Modern Manufacturing seminar on October 2nd, she's posted as well a wonderful little quiz that was made. I don't know, Keith, if you've taken that quiz yet. I turned out a lot of our team is like Tony Stark, and I think Jennifer was, I can't remember. I had somebody that was Hermione that I saw that was in there, but either way, I turned out I'm Neo, so that's what I did on that quiz. So you guys, if you haven't taken the quiz, she posted it in chat. Go ahead and take it. It's kind of fun just to see like how you look at technology or process or people to really drive that forward. And yeah, it's a really exciting event, like I said, on October 2nd. So if you haven't registered, please do. With that, Keith, thank you again, sir, for your time. Really appreciate it. It's really great to hear about the insights and what we're kind of playing with leverage, and how we're kind of more at the forefront of this technology because of our platform choice, which has been fantastic. But yeah, a big thank you, Keith, for all your background and knowledge. I'm sure the audience really appreciates it.
It was fun. Hopefully we'll get to do this again.
Agreed.